You ever pull into your driveway, minding your own business, and find your dream car, your pride and joy, absolutely destroyed? I mean, we're talking about my brand new Tesla Cybertruck. The one I bought to celebrate early retirement, sitting there with the windshield shattered, compliance violations spray painted in blood red across the hood, glass everywhere, mirrors dangling, paint gouged so deep I could see metal. For a second, I genuinely thought I was having a stroke. Like, did I just drive onto a movie set for Revenge of the Wannabe Cops or something? Because this wasn't some teenage prank. This was surgical planned, carried out with the kind of nerve only a certain breed of psycho ever develops. And there he was, cool as a cucumber, leaning on my mailbox in some knockoff security uniform badge, winking under the streetlight, oozing that energy of a guy who got bounced from the police academy but never got over it. Mr. Elliot, he called out, strutting over like he was directing traffic at a crime scene. I'm Larry Clark, HOA Security Division. Your vehicle has been out of compliance for weeks. This is authorized enforcement. I swear the way he hit those words, authorized enforcement, I nearly wondered if maybe I was the crazy one. But then my brain snapped back into gear. Since when does our HOA, which has trouble organizing a bake sale, have a security division with the right to destroy a Tesla? So I pulled out my phone, got to record the madness, right? And demanded to see these notices he claimed to have sent. Larry whipped out paperwork stamped with our HOA's letterhead, all official dates and jargon like aggressive vehicle styling and aesthetic disruption. But I'd never seen any of it. And at this point, I was so furious and confused, I called 911. I mean, someone just destroyed my property and is standing here like he owns the place. Larry looked completely unbothered by the idea of cops showing up, almost like he expected it. 15 minutes later, 2 officers pull in and Larry flashes his badge and paperwork. They listen, nod, treat him like any other rent-a-cop they've run into before. I was just about ready to lose my mind when our HOA president, Harold Mitchell, showed up. Harold's one of those guys who always knows what to say in a crisis, been president for 8 years, the pillar of the community type. He rushes over, all business shakes the cops' hands. Officers, this is a contractor issue gone very wrong. We'll handle the property damage and review our protocols immediately. He turns to me full of apologies, offers to pay for the repairs himself, promises a full review, says Larry's getting retrained. And for a second, I almost relaxed. Harold wrote me a check for $6,000 right there, promised more if it didn't cover everything, and assured me this was a terrible misunderstanding that would never happen again. He looked me dead in the eye, said he'd failed to supervise Larry, and that as president, he'd take full responsibility. Part of me wanted to believe it. It all seemed so clean, too clean. Because if there's one thing my years in tech taught me, it's that the more polished the solution, the more likely you're being played. Larry, meanwhile, drove away on his little golf cart, totally unfazed. Next day, Harold comes by with more paperwork, contract details, suspension letters, everything buttoned up. Mr. Elliot, you have my word. This won't ever happen again. But not 2 days after, Larry is back approaching me at the mailbox, grinning like nothing ever happened. Harold suspended me, but I'll keep up security patrols. Community safety doesn't get a vacation. That's when my nerves really started to fray. I told Harold, who suddenly sounded stressed, even scared, said he might need a restraining order, that Larry was unmanageable and refusing to accept termination. But here's the twist. My neighbor Susan started dropping breadcrumbs that turned my gut inside out. She'd noticed Harold and Larry working together a little too closely on problem residents over the last year. Said Harold always had an answer ready for every situation involving Larry's so-called enforcement. The more I thought about it, the more everything felt staged. That's when I called my old law school buddy Claire. She does estate law, lots of HOA stuff. She dug into Larry's business and boom, turns out Mitchell Clark Community Solutions is registered to Harold's own address with both their names as equal partners. For almost a year. When I confronted Harold, he spun a story about helping Larry out after some hard times, but his hand shook and he couldn't look me in the eye. Then came the kicker. I caught the meeting pre-dawn at a diner downtown. Not arguing, not fighting, Just two guys in a booth huddled over coffee planning. That's when Harold, maybe realizing he was cooked, called with the sob story. Larry was his ex-brother-in-law. He'd tried to help him after a bad divorce. Larry had issues with authority, yada yada. But Claire's investigation kept turning up regular payments from Harold to their business with notes like security consulting fees. The pieces started falling together. Susan started recalling Harold visiting other neighbors, suggesting their homes were vulnerable or they should consider downsizing for safety. Margaret got warned about her husband's garage attracting criminals. Robert got spooked about his home business and delivery patterns. Every time Larry's security assessment just happened to show up to add pressure. But Susan's real bombshell was an old garden planning audio recording she'd accidentally captured a conversation between Harold and Larry. Another target ready for pressure, Harold said. She's researching senior living ramp-up evening patrols. Larry replied like a soldier taking orders. Hearing that, my anger went nuclear. So I did what anyone would do, called an emergency HOA meeting, played Susan's tape over the speakers. Harold tried to deflect, but Larry cornered, and desperate blew everything wide open. Harold, you promised no one would trace the partnership. You recruited me because you knew I'd follow orders. Wrote the intimidation scripts, trained me to play the cop, picked out the vulnerable targets. Larry confessed to everything Harold used. HOA data to pick victims. Larry played bad cop. Together, they scared folks into selling homes for cheap, systematic cold practiced. Turns out Harold had even kept a training manual, 87 pages, spelling out every detail of their scam. Psychological profiles, intimidation scripts, metrics for success, you name it. The FBI had already been sniffing around Harold's bank record shell company's weird cash deposits. When I turned over the manual and Susan's tape, the feds moved fast. Harold and Larry weren't just scamming our HOA. They'd been teaching their method to other HOAs, running seminars, spreading the cancer across Southern California. 9 different associations, hundreds of thousands stolen from elderly and vulnerable residents. Watching Harold hauled into federal court, orange jumpsuit and shackles, was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. The jury took just 4 hours to convict him on every count. Conspiracy, fraud, extortion, wire fraud, witness tampering, you name it. Larry testified for the prosecution, breaking down on the stand as he explained how Harold had targeted him for recruitment. How he'd wanted so badly to wear a badge, he'd done anything, even this. Harold showed no remorse, not an ounce. The judge gave him 12 years, a lifetime ban, from any HOA, $500,000 in restitution. Larry got 4 thanks to cooperation and emerged actually doing some good, teaching senior centers how to spot scams using his experience as a warning. But justice didn't just stop at prison. Harold's mansion seized and turned into a fraud prevention campus where I now help train others in how to recognize predators like him. The Elliott Protocol for HOA transparency became state law. Harold's old office is now a memorial plaza with testimonial walls and monthly conferences for law enforcement and victim support. Our case even led to federal legislation, the Mitchell-Clark Act, requiring every HOA officer to undergo background checks with criminal penalties for exploiting residents. I even got the last laugh, bought Harold's old house for pennies on the dollar, keep his BMW and Larry's Harley in my garage as reminders of what happens when you weaponize authority. My consulting business helps 400+ communities stay safe from predators like these. And you know what? Sometimes I see Larry at conferences, and we nod, no friendship, just mutual understanding. He found redemption, Harold found infamy. But life's never that tidy, is it? Just last week, I got a call from someone claiming to be Harold's old regional coordinator, implying there's a whole network out there still licking their wounds, still angry about the business we exposed. So what would you do if your HOA president turned out to be the villain of the story? Ever been burned by someone you thought you could trust? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And remember, real justice isn't just about revenge, it's about building something better out of the ashes.